All right, folks. So tonight we have Paul Daniel. He's a life coach and a writer, fiction and nonfiction.
Yes.
Right. Paul Daniel, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Pablo.
Yeah. So just to make the story short, we met last week, right?
Yes.
Last week in a piano meetup.
Yes.
Yeah. Am I correct? So why you were there? Tell me.
I was there because I am doing my work in artwork, and in addition to that, starting my own business, which includes the artwork that I do. And so I am in a state where I no longer have the constant interaction with people that comes with either being in a job or having employees. I left my job to start my own business and move ahead with everything that's involved with the business, from the artwork to the other divisions of the company. And so I need to go ahead and actively acquire interaction with people that will be stimulated. A person should have social life. Period.
Yeah.
A human being is a social being and a social creature, and you need to interact with people. And so I started looking for ways to find people who had values that I value, the good values of life, a good art, reason, self-esteem, and purposefulness. And so I found out I heard of the Meetup app, and so I searched various terms, everything from puzzles to piano. And,
Really?
yes, and one of the most productive searches was searching the instrument names, and so specifically piano, because I love music, and so when I searched piano, I found several different piano meetups, one of which was the one that we met at, and I've gone to it many times. And
There's a couple, right?
Yeah, there's many, and there's more than one good one, and but the really good ones are hard to find. You gotta really find which ones are in the right style, and have people who you click with and who you really enjoy talking with. So the one that we met at was the one that I found after a long search.
Oh, wow. So you have been really digging in. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very interesting, because when I started looking in the meetups, the meetup website about performing and just try to meet with all musicians, I was having a little bit of trouble though.
Yes. It's a little bit surprising in a city of 7 million people, 7 million people, and you can find it so hard to find people who have culture of the kind that you really search for, that would provide you with a satisfying social interaction, and some of these meetups really do the trick.
Yeah,
I'm really
I
glad
do agree.
that I found
Do
them.
you say are you referring to the fact that we are missing this arts and culture interaction? For example, I'm a composer, I would like to meet with other composers.
Yes.
I'm a pianist, I would like to just meet up with other pianists and just talk about music and all the aspects surrounding it. Do you think we are missing a little bit of that?
What's missing a little bit?
I mean, in the interaction phase, because we do see a lot of concerts, but we don't see these small groups.
I see what you mean.
Yes.
When you go to a concert, it's not specifically meant for socialization. The most you could do is an intermission. Is you see somebody who looks like they're approachable, walk up to them and say, "Wow, so how did you enjoy that performance of the piano concerto we just heard? I thought that the pianist had a great deal of passion, or I thought the pianist was kind of bland." And you might interact, but this is New York City. People tend to be very cautious,
Okay.
and so concertizing isn't a socializing venue. And it creates this odd dilemma that in a city of 6 million people or so, you can find it very hard to find specifically the kind of people that you really want to interact with. And these meetups allow you to, at minimum, know that when you're there, there's going to be people who at least have one thing in common. Like if you search piano, if it's a piano meetup of a name like Let's All Meet Up and Hear Piano Music, or Come and Play Piano, if that's the title, you know that people there at least have an interest in piano music. And, let's say at a meetup there's 15 people who show up. You talk with people, usually afterwards, some people want to go out to maybe a diner and talk with some of the people they've met. And then finally you can accomplish what you're looking for, some social life, some vital interaction, some conversation, instead of just listening to the music, which is great too. But finally you can interact based on your values. Oh, you love composing too. You play piano. You don't play piano, but you work in the classical music industry. You aren't involved with classical music, but, you're interested in anything involved with piano. So what kind of music so far that you've heard? And you can have a conversation, and that digresses into other things. Oh, so what year did you go to high school? Oh, wow, we graduated pretty much the same year. When I was in school, I was on this kind of team. You also did that kind of team too. Oh, wow, did you know this person? Oh, you knew that person. Suddenly you can maybe find a person who you not only have values with, but you might have a similar history. And suddenly you're bonding. And then you're really networking and forming new friends. Or, if it's in the professional context, I'm looking for a good piano teacher. Oh, you're a piano teacher. Oh, wow. So, suddenly you're interacting on a business context. So it's a long bit of a winding road, but if you exert the effort with these resources that are out there in the city of 6 million random people, you can, if you keep trying, apparently, we're talking to each other and doing a podcast about a week ago, up top.
Yes, which is what happened when we had the meetup. I went there just for performing, but then I wanted to just make some networking. Then I met you, and I met all the folks also, and we just made more connections, right?
Yes, So you got to, I guess the bottom line of it is use the resources that are out there to bona fide social interact, as opposed to music attend. And when you go to those social things, just the keyword for achieving some either whatever networking you're looking for. It's either it's personal friends or business, whatever you're looking for. One word: talk. Find somebody who looks like they might be approachable and speak. Talk about what has just happened. Ask them what kind of work they do. Ask questions. Answer questions you get asked, and suddenly you're having some social fermenting and creation of the networking of the kind that you're looking for. If what you're trying to achieve is networking in the music industry.
Now that you are also a life coach, right?
Yes.
Are you having a lot of difficulties in the classical music scene, right? Are you having a lot of people that are very shy and they are having a hard time trying to interact with other people? Or you're finding that not the case?
I would say that there's a combination. Some people are very amenable to being engaged in a conversation, and some people are wallflowers. I'd say it's not exactly this, but it's one or the other. There's the ones who will talk, and there are the ones who are just very much there. They perform, they play the piano, and then they want to leave. But that's a personality issue. But that's what I found so far. That said, I'm not actively soliciting life coaching students at these meetups.
Yes.
I go to, like I mentioned earlier, I go to interact socially and have good conversations and perhaps make new friends, which I have had success in doing.
Yeah, I think those small meetups, they're very focused, niche-wise, right?
Yes.
Let's say you're looking for a niche, which is music, and then you go to a sub-niche, which is piano music, and then you go to another sub-niche, which is piano music meetup. You find these people that have the same interest, and then you can really sit down and have a very common interest conversation, which is very interesting.
Yes, almost always after the event.
Yes.
During it, it's one person after another going up to play piano. Or if it's a guitar meetup, you've got people going to do guitar music. You've got, maybe there's violin meetups and that type of thing. There's chamber music meetups. And you shouldn't be talking during that because the purpose of it isn't to socialize, it's to hear the music, enjoy that experience. But afterwards, it's, hey, okay, let's go out to
have a drink.
Mustang Sally's bar and let's sit down and have a good steak and talk about stuff.
I will tell you something. In my experience, I used to have a lot of those meetups when I was doing my bachelor degree, but were not with pianists. Mostly were guitar players. Guitar players tend to be more socialized. So they like to socialize, they like to relax.
I can see that.
You can see that, right? And even when I went to do my master's degree, I find the same common thread. Guitar players were easier to approach and easier to hang out versus the pianists in others area.
Yeah.
And
the piano classical background, I think, may have more people who are more formal and may not be actively the type who are the more, this is the word for it, the gregarious type. You might see more flamboyant, colorful personalities who play guitar. It's a very open, interactive medium. You can look directly at the audience during the performance. The pianist looks at the sheet music or the keys and isn't specifically a interactive artist. So I could see how guitarists would be more gregarious and piano people might be a little, maybe somewhat less. That is, but there's
that's a good point.
Like yourself, who love to talk.
That's a good point because
you're like me. I love to talk.
I like to socialize. That's a good point. It is true. It's something you have to do with the body language. You notice pianists always face towards the other side of the stage rather than facing the audience versus the guitar players, which are always facing the audience and the singers also. And
there
maybe
could be a psychological
effect,
type of issue going on there. That one is more focused directly on the music and the other is actively seeking to engage the audience.
Now, I saw your website and noticed that you have like 45 projects. And when I say projects, beautiful projects. Blog issues. So blogs. So you take one piece of art. Let's say it's a piece of art, whether it's music or picture or anything or dance, and you take that art and you just start blogging.
Allow me to clarify what we're speaking of. What I had the idea for was what I call the Beautiful Project. Which was a effort to, in one spot, shine a light on great, beautiful things. Period. Now, the main way that it's been done so far is the blog of the Beautiful Project. And so I'll just speak about that because that's almost the only way in which I'm doing it right now. It's called The Blog About Beautiful Things. If anybody wants to, they can just Google the words The Blog About Beautiful Things, including the. It's a top Google hit as a Google search by its own name. And moved from third to second to first place. I'm very proud of that.
That's
took a while, but it's there. So The Blog About Beautiful Things. What I do is I have a list of hundreds of beautiful things I've encountered over the years. And for each, when I have finally the time to go ahead and do a new blog issue, I'll select one specific beautiful thing, which will either be a piece of music, a painting, a statue, something in nature, and I'll write a short article about that. And what I do is then I send out an email of that article, and I post the article as a blog issue with a link to that painting or statue included in the blog issue. So what it is, it's a blog about beautiful things. For example, the most recent issue, there's a really exquisite Fred Astaire dance sequence to the well-known piece of music, song, Putting on the Ritz. It shows up in the song, that's a famous song. And his dance sequence to it this is one of the most famous Fred Astaire dance sequences of one of the greatest dancers of all time. And so what this is for this blog issue, it's a focus on this amazing performance clip that this man did in this movie, and I write some words that are endeavoring to express some of the perceptions that I've had about it, and some of the things of why it's so great, and then I sent it out. And, there's about
I think
on the list for it, but the main thing is what it does is it keeps me focused every now and then on the good things in the world, and everybody who gets the email or is on the email.
So for those folks that are wondering on what he meant by those that are getting the email, he has an email list that people subscribe, and every time that he does an update, they receive. He make an email to just send it to all his email lists. Yeah. So
if anybody wants to be on the email list, the email address to email to request being on it is in the about section of the blog.
Okay.
But that's what the project is, to explain what's going on.
Yes.
It's what one could call a beauty aggregator. It's a website specifically devoted to being an exhibit of the most beautiful things in existence.
And when you say the most beautiful thing, you're saying some specific things, or it could be a picture that you saw and I don't know, Google, and you say, you know what, this picture looks very captivating, and I would like to just extract that beautiful thing that is captivating.
And then laser focus on that in that issue, because it gives you this immense burst of sense of aesthetic satisfaction.
Yes.
It's a bit like, you're walking down the street, you see many things. But if you ever were to stop and focus your entire attention on one flower in azalea bushes or impatiens, and just look at that one flower specifically, it would be a much more intense aesthetic experience because you're focused entirely on that one beautiful thing. Whereas when you're looking at things in general, you're taking in everything, and the impact of one individual thing isn't as strong. And by doing this, it draws attention to a beautiful thing, and you can, by having it literally served up to you as an email or blog issue, it allows you to focus in on this beautiful thing. And so it does good for the readers, it does good for everybody.
So there's an effect after that, right? Yes. People get that effect, and then I can't imagine, man, living in the city when you have a lot of things going on at the same time.
Yeah.
It's very hard to look at details, and even in the arts, right? You have classical music, pop music, you have poetry, you have dance. Inside only the dance category, you have salsa, you have swing, you have so many things going on.
Ballet,
so it's a lot. And then when
everything.
The list goes on and on and on. And when you want to focus something, it's very hard.
Yes.
Even though, for example, I was in the concert, right? Before I started my podcast, right? Even though I was inside the building, I was already thinking a lot of stuff that were happening outside the building. So only with that, I was...
Wheels keep turning even when you're at the concert.
And it's very hard to focus. Now, so in your life coaching side, I'm assuming you have patients, not patients, but customers that comes to you and they tell you, okay, Paul, how can I just put myself in this center? I'm all over the place. How can I just be here instead of here?
The just fast answer to that, an accurate answer to that, would be the word refocused. As a human being, you are always dealing, as an adult especially, with your work, your personal life, the bills that need to get paid, the difficult conversation you might have with your significant other, the problems going on with your brother, sister, mother, father, family life, a ton of things going on at once. And the issue is, if you are going to go to do something which is meant to be relaxing, you, there in your mind, you recognize the wheels are still turning up there. And what you do is you label those things as things that are other than what you want to do.
Yes.
And you attribute those things that are buzzing in your mind to the normal human function of a mind, it's on things. But you have the power as a human being to control what your attention is focused on. And you take this attention that's, going all over the place, and with the full strength of your will, your volition, you turn your eyeballs and your ears and your head to the music being performed at the concert, and you literally have to force yourself to listen. Probably your mind's still going to start drifting off a little bit towards the other things. It's kind of like a car that pulls to the right or the left on the highway that isn't quite properly aligned. And this is normal, almost like in brain function. The brain tends to jump around, but you got to keep pulling that car that veers to the right back to the center of the road. Refocus it again on the concert. Refocus it again on the music. Refocus it on the podcast that I'm attending right now, even though other things might have been
going on in your head. Yes,
you keep your mind refocused on the thing that you want to experience intensely, and for the duration of that thing, it tends to get easier, and eventually you find yourself absorbed in the experience. It's not to say your mind isn't going to keep drifting off towards that thing that was bothering you, but by using your volition, your will, to refocus on the thing, you will make yourself experience more fully. That is, you'll see it in greater detail, in greater focus. You'll feel more. And that's what's meant by making yourself be able to appreciate the experience. That's my answer. Refocus. Keep refocusing.
Yeah, to be honest,
it's hard, but you gotta do it.
Yes, the beat, seems like, there you go. Oh god, it wasn't recording you. I hope so. Either way. So, yes, the one thing that I really noticed that, it's a very simple concept, but then, at the same time, it could be a little bit tedious, which is living in the present.
Yes.
It's a very hard concept, and it's very hard to even grasp. How can you just tell people or advise people any exercises of how to identify those thoughts and just say, no, go away, I want to live in that moment?
My answer would be that the issues that are distracting you, one, if they are of such priority that they keep occurring to you, then you may need to stop what you're doing and resolve them. If that is a sensible thing to do. If your activity is so being distracted by the concern over the romance that you're in, or the financial trouble that you're having. If I'm not saying at work you should stop what you're doing and start re-examining how you're budgeting that month. What I'm saying is that if there's something that keeps occurring to you persistently, it's perhaps something to go ahead and just solve that problem.
Yes.
Literally, smack down that gopher that keeps popping up in your head. And when playing, smack down that mole that keeps, as if it's whack-a-mole, keeps popping up. That said, if something is continuously occurring to you, despite your having already resolved it, not that I'm a professional psychotherapist, but I'm aware as a life coach the technique that's called cognitive behavioral therapy, which has many different ways to apply it, but in a nutshell can be described as what I already said. Relabeling it, relabeling it as a distracting thing that keeps occurring to you, an intrusive thought, reattributing it to some cause, either because you're sleep deprived or you're stressed and things tend to bother you more in those states. You reattribute it to that cause, and then you volitionally make yourself refocus. And that's how you stay in the moment, in any context. And,
so basically...
And let time pass.
Yes.
Let time pass after you refocus, and you keep exerting effort to refocus, because your brain will eventually focus on what you want to be focused
so
on.
basically make it
Stay in the moment by refocusing on what you want to.
So those things are
be in the moment with.
Okay, so those things are getting you out of focus. Try to make them as concrete as possible, and just try to put them away.
Yes.
Or it's just I don't know.
If you're a person who is organized, which is advisable, write it down on a piece of paper, or as if you use like a smartphone, if it has a reminder function, set a reminder for 7:15 p.m. to deal with the paying of the Verizon phone bill. So then you set a reminder that you're going to deal with it. You're going to deal with it, but you're going to deal with it later. And so whatever the problem is, have a good conversation about the thing that your inconsiderate roommate is doing. But that way it's been dealt with, and you can refocus then on what you should be focusing on.
So that's a very common topic inside the self-development world. Let's say like if you have this thought, right? Try to identify that thought, right? And try even to look for information about that thought, right? In that way you can really make it concrete instead of something that can control you. So instead, let's say that I'm feeling bad because my shoes got wet, right? Identifying that feeling, right, or that emotion, and say, oh wait, what is this that I'm feeling? Okay, I'm feeling like this. Let me just look on the internet in this case and look for why I'm feeling like this when my shoes are getting wet. And then you're going to have a lot of results. So the process is that you're identifying now the emotion. Now you're having control, a logical control, instead of an emotion. Which it could be, like I said in a couple of my videos, it could be a sword or double blade, right? If you don't control that, it can get you out of your destiny. Not destiny, but your
purpose.
Purpose, yes. You have more projects here. You have
each one isn't a project. It's simply a blog issue. Each one is a couple of paragraphs about a single beautiful thing. So far, I've published 45 blog issues, and that's all that there is to it. The blog about beautiful things isn't a list of projects. It's literally blog, and the individual things on it are blog issues. Each one has its own beautiful thing, which is the subject of the issue, and that's all that there is to it.
That's really nice. I like this. I like that concept. Okay, so you said that you work in the classical music industry.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it.
Yes, that was a long period. It took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and now I know I'm doing my but I had a ton of jobs over the course of about 13 years. The first one was I worked in the East Village Tower Records classical music department when there was still music retail, and I worked there for 10 months. And it was the world's largest classical music department, over 50,000 CDs.
Oh wow!
Yes, it was just like the greatest temple to classical music, and it was the international headquarters for the classical music of Tower Records. The international buyer worked there at that particular department, and so it was I grew up in classical music, and I had Europeano lessons, but working there gave a real seasoning to my knowledge of recordings and exposure to the more obscure but still great classical music composers like Max Reger. And the more cheerful music of Dmitri Shostakovich. So I learned a lot about classical music there, about recordings, and I met some of the musicians who were on the CDs. A guy came in and he said, I need a recording of Berlioz's Symphony Fantastique. I want to give it as a gift to my granddaughter, because I'm actually the person who plays the clarinet and who's playing that famous melody. And it's this particular symphony with this conductor. Do you have it in stock? And I'm just like, oh, it's such a pleasure to meet you. So amazing stuff like that. And after that, I worked for 5 months at the Virgin Megastore Union Square classical music department, and I met Joshua Bell.
Oh, yes.
Great violinist there, and that was amazing. He was really nice, and we talked. He was looking for a bunch of things. And, as
you work in the Lincoln Center too, right?
Yes. And so I was in other jobs after that while I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do while still trying to make a living. And so finally I landed in a job that was suitable for maintaining my lifestyle while I was figuring things out.
Okay.
It was a very, very developmental job. I worked for 6 years at the New York City Ballet department where they sold memberships in the guild, the membership division.
Yes.
Where you got nice benefits like house seats or a really big edge on Nutcracker tickets, which is popular at the various levels.
So you have all those tickets and all the stuff right there in your hands?
We not the physical tickets, but what we had was the materials about the membership levels, and we talked with people who had bought tickets in the past about the real issue was that the ballet needed money to keep itself going in addition to the money that came in from tickets. So they have the guild. That's what the membership divisions of most non-profit arts companies is for. And so for what we would do is for 3 months, let's say January through March, it would be selling of the guild memberships, and then it would be 3 months of selling the upcoming winter seasons subscriptions. So it was 3 months of selling guild memberships, 3 months of selling subscription tickets, then another 3 months of selling guild memberships, and then 3 months of selling the spring seasons subscriptions. So 6 years straight, I all day in day out talking with people who love ballet, and they wanted the people who were selling the subscriptions to attend the performances, so you could really speak more fluently with the attendees. And so there in the fourth ring, where they gave us seats, I saw a ton of neoclassical ballet, a lot of Balanchine, Jerome Robbins, Christopher Whedon, and other choreographers. That was some of which is some of the most intense aesthetic experiences I've ever had. Like the opening moments of the Tchaikovsky Serenade in C.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
It's that famous melody line.
That's a beautiful. I love it.
And the opening and the shining of the blue light on the dancers as they stand perfectly still. It's mind blowing. So there were 6 years there. In one of the various positions that I had, I won't say which one. I met Mikhail Baryshnikov, the greatest ballet dancer who has ever lived. I mean, I met him and we talked for an hour and a half.
So you had the opportunity to speak with him?
Yeah. It was in a different context than working at the ballet, but I did encounter him. And since we're talking about ballet, I met Mikhail Baryshnikov, and that was just amazing because, I mean, I had been watching his performance of the Nutcracker, the American Ballet Theater, Mikhail Baryshnikov production of the Nutcracker. It's basically considered a definitive performance of the Nutcracker. I had been watching it since I was 3 years old, and Baryshnikov is such a superlative dancer. Just a sublime technique that everyone from Gelsey Kirkland to Balanchine thought of in the highest respect. And after all his years of, he retired from ballet dancing and he switched to being an actor. And as everybody knows, he was on certain TV shows. And then after all of that, he still has his own ballet center. And so after all of these things, and hearing and seeing him my whole life, I met him. And we talked. And I've got to say, he was just such a regular, pleasant guy, just absolutely zero any kind of celebrity snootiness. He was so pleasant to talk to, and it reminded me of my heritage because my heritage in part is from Hungary, and there's an Eastern European immigrant type of behavior. Very, very down to earth, very candid, very dealing with nuts and bolts, and very honest about reality. It's a certain Eastern European way of talking about things. And Mikhail Baryshnikov, what is he? He's a Russian immigrant in America. And I could see his kind of Eastern European candidness about life and the way he spoke. I kind of related to because I grew up around those.
Yeah, they tend to be more down
to earth, yes.
Down to earth, very straightforward. You can have a very straightforward. You can easily get yes or no.
Yes.
Easily.
Yes.
You don't have to play games with them.
Yes. Yes.
I think around Slavic individuals.
Yes.
Polish and Russians, and they will.
Yes.
They're not going to play games. They will tell you yes or no.
Exactly, and that's exactly how he was. And like I said, we talked for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And that was a real pleasure. Other people who I briefly encountered while working. So for 3 months I worked at Carnegie Hall for the New York City Ballet.
That's what I wanted to get to the Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, I bumped into Franz Onazorg in the elevator on the way up to my interview.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, "Pardon me, do you work for Carnegie Hall?" And I said, "Not yet." But, eventually I was hired. And eventually I switched to New York City Ballet for a bunch of reasons.
Okay.
But I did briefly work there.
So how easy it is to get a spot in Carnegie Hall?
Well, what we're speaking of here is not a position that requires music training.
Okay.
Or even music administration background, or bachelor's in music, theory of any kind. What we were this was a department that was selling subscriptions. What they really wanted was people who could sell well. So they would train you if you had no experience in classical music, and they would have you attend concerts. What they needed was people who could talk to people well about the upcoming season to give it over the phone sufficient color that the other person would sign up for a subscription.
They will teach you the sell pitch. They will teach you the rapport. That way you can get the closing.
Franz Onazorg was the director of Carnegie Hall at the time.
Yeah. I noticed that Carnegie Hall is one we get it. It's one of the best
venues of performance
arts, right? But
I mean, everybody from
around the world,
everybody from Isaac Stern to the Beatles has performed at Carnegie Hall.
The simple fact
it's Mecca for performance.
Tchaikovsky was the composer
performed at Carnegie Hall.
The composer chosen to open the Carnegie Hall venue it tells you where is the history of that place.
Huge history.
So now my question, let me just clarify. My question is, okay, if I'm a musician, I'm a pianist, and I would like to get surrounded those people that worked with the Carnegie Hall area or the Carnegie Hall environment. Like, let's call it environment. How can people manage to go or surpass to get? How can I explain? To get a direct contact with even the manager or the person that booked the concerts.
Well, I'd say there's a couple of approaches, which I can think of. Myself, I've never industriously endeavored to networks with specific performance venue personnel, but if I wanted to meet people who worked at Carnegie Hall, I would first I would handle it in the most blunt way, which is there's somebody who you want to speak with for some reason about networking. You call them and say, listen, I am going to be doing a podcast, and I'm really interested in promoting the history of Carnegie Hall. So you would call and ask who handles history of Carnegie Hall. You make bottom line, you make an appointment.
Yes.
You know, I would say the most honest approach is the best approach.
Okay.
And not anything other than bluntly, you know, if you want to interact with people who work at Carnegie Hall, I would say the right way to do it is endeavor to interact with a person who works at Carnegie Hall. You call and ask if they would be willing to, have an appointment where you can come and talk to them for some very coherent, clear business reason. There's other things that you can do, however. One, for example, at many classical music concerts, there's what's called going back. It's not necessarily done at every concert. It's kind of at the discretion of the artist. But, like, when I went to see Sarah Chang perform at Carnegie Hall, I called and I asked, will they be doing going back at Carnegie Hall? And they said, yes, Sarah Chang, she's going to be doing it. She's very traditional. And going back means after the concert. It's kind of amazing that this exists, or if they're still doing it, I don't know, for security, but they were the last time I tried to. There is what's called it's either the green room or it's the dressing room of the performing artist, and after the concert is over, anybody who wants to meet that artist, if the artist has said they'll do it, you go back and you stand on a line that might be 20 people deep, to wait to speak with Sarah Chang and shake hands, say thank you, I enjoyed your performance so much, ask any questions. And this is allowed by certain venues and it's allowed by certain artists. It's, I would say, as far as I know, it's a carryover of the old European traditions of interaction between the artist and the audience. As far as I know, in the 1800s and the early 20th century, 1900s, it was considered almost de rigueur. It was almost the usual and almost expected for the artist to be receptive to, after a concert, having audience members come and thank them and briefly speak with them. It's a tradition of classical music. Today, with heightened security and stuff, I don't know if it's still being done at Carnegie Hall, but I met Sarah Chang, and we spoke for like 10 minutes, and it was a really nice conversation. And I met I met Emmy, what's her name? Hilary Hahn, another violinist, at Carnegie Hall too. And we had a very pleasant conversation. It was wonderful to meet them. I thanked them for their performance. I thanked Hilary Hahn for her wonderful recording of the Beethoven Violin Concerto that she had recently put out, which was a big hit. And then I left, and that's how it goes. So in this manner, you're interacting with the performers. Inevitably, there are people there from their recording labels. Inevitably, there's staff that's there for the protection of the security guards. And so, if you were looking to speak with somebody about stuff, you could in that way too. So, if nothing else, you may get to meet a world-famous performer.
And that's a fair point, the fact that...
And you could ask them, by the way, I have this going on, would you be interested? And they'll say, no, or they'll say, well, all that goes through my agent, this is their phone number. And then you can call the agent, and you can say, I spoke with, this time. So, and they're used to this. People approach them about projects and stuff all the time.
And to be honest, I wouldn't mind if they say, you know what, I can't.
Totally.
Because when I went to see Les Brown in Newark, right? I went to see him, and I was waiting for him.
The motivational speaker, Les Brown? Yeah.
And I couldn't see him because he wasn't feeling good,
he's had some very, very terrible health problems. And I can see how he would.
And that's completely understandable. I think that we should,
especially after the way he speaks, because that man, he is about passion. And after one of his events,
Paul, when I went to see him in New Jersey, right, I never felt an incredible energy from somebody. It was like he just somehow just was cracking my mind and my emotion. It was a very intense experience.
Yeah.
I was like,
he's a fast speaker, an emotional speaker, and he speaks about the events that were poignantly, in the most painful ways, affecting his life. And so, yeah, that man will blow you away.
And for those folks that haven't yet.
I'm not saying everything Les Brown says is true, or it's necessarily the right way to do life coaching, because to maintain that level of passion, outside that event, you try to live that way.
Yes.
Man, you're going to be exhausted after 2 days. But he is, there are many things that he says that are inspirational.
Yes.
Especially about persistence.
Yes, he just in fact his story, right? He came from I think it was Liberty City in Florida, and he was poor.
Yes.
And he was labeled as a mentally retarded.
Yes.
And just with that, where he's now, it's a clear evidence that you should at least check him out, even if, for musicians. I don't know.
He's had a real uphill battle that's inspiring.
I don't know if you encounter this, but musicians, classic musicians, when I start talking about self-development and these people like Robert Greene, Tony Robbins, Les Brown, it seems like I cannot get there. I cannot talk about those things with this kind of environment. It seems like when I talk about Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, and all these great self-development individuals, it seems like it's not there. It's not even recognizable. It's like the topic is not. The topic of self-development is not there.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
Why is that? You being around the block, around classical musicians a lot.
Yeah.
So why is that? Which is very needed. I mean, as a classical musician, you have to spend a lot of hours in your instrument.
Yes.
You have to spend a lot of. You play in front of people. That can for some folks, it's not easy. They have to go to therapy. They have to eat like 5 bananas and stuff like that. They have to drink their own coffee, decaf. So it goes deeper than that. Why is that? Why do you think that thing of not going, you know what, let me just go to the self-development.
Why hasn't that become a significant presence in the classical music industry? I believe, I haven't studied that, but just spontaneously answer your question, I believe the answer to that is that the arts tend, in particular music, tends to get treated with a more non-intellectually explicit manner of thinking and acting about it than most other categories of work. And to put it in one term, it's treated as almost a more mystic thing. Thing which can't be put into exact words, in part because music, those melodies tend to come from your subconscious.
Yes.
And people view that as a purely inspirational type of thing, which the cause for which either shouldn't be looked for or can't be found, which isn't true. You can explain it, but the current state is that music is something that is created in a passionate, emotional, and inspiration type way that is not intellectually understood. And therefore, the idea of somebody speaking to you about self-development and how to motivate yourself is something that seems like it's in a very different lane of a different highway.
Yes.
That, music is this undefinable thing, and self-development and motivation and life coaching is very much about, which would benefit a musician. It's about coming to understand how you function as a human being and how to make yourself live in a really good way, in hopefully the best way. And so I think that's why. The music industry has never, so far, adopted the practices that certain other industries, like concrete business,
Yes.
or electronics, or information technology,
Mm.
or sports,
Yes.
which are very concrete,
Mhm.
very even mathematical,
Mathematical,
and
yes.
analytical, and so are more amenable to an intellectual guidance about how to do it. And so somebody who does music might feel very averse to hearing about an intellectual analysis about how they could create inspiration in themselves, because they regard it as something that they should just let happen in an organic way. But at the same time, because they don't have a structure for it, they may have more difficulty. And so they would be better. But I would say that's why.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So
I never
far,
thought about it.
so far. Eventually, I think that it will come in. But because utterly, this is clear. Life coaching is a very new profession.
It is true. It is true. It's been around for how long? I mean, like 40 years or something like that?
It's, I would say, it existed, as I understand the history of the profession. It started in literally coaching. And when I say coaching, I mean sports coaching. Sports coaches talking about what made for a really good player and what makes for a really good team. Then they started speaking with businessmen in corporations about how to be strong in your work and how to have your team and your business work. And from this, there grew this new thing separate from sports of the motivational speaker. And eventually this new term, not the sports coach, but the life coach, the term got coined. And the watershed moment sort of for this motivational type of work was, to the best of my knowledge, Stephen Covey's publication of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
I love that book.
That's a book that a lot of people could relate to because it was so concrete. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Just get those 7 habits, read it, reread it, and you will just make sure that you really... Make sure they're ingrained in your mind. Because one thing is just to read it and say, oh, there's 7 habits. But then when you read it and try to apply them, you will feel some changes. Yeah. You will feel some changes.
And I'm not saying 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is the be-all and end-all of self-guidance or anything like that. What it was is that after the publication of that book, a lot more people had heard of motivational books or the motivational speakers. And things have grown, and it's still growing. It's like it's alchemy turning into the exact science of chemistry, but it's taking a very long time. And you had a question about artistic inspiration, which I think connects well to this. But you go ahead. Right?
So the thing is that as an artist, right, we do let ourselves to be guided by inspirations, right? But then in the same time, we have to do the hard work. We have to do the hustle, right? For example, I'm a pianist. I have to sit down and I have to practice like crazy. So there by itself, there's one tool that I can say like, hey, I'm practicing and I know my body's not liking it, but I know it's the right thing to do. So right there, I'm making the connection between the self-development. I'm making a huge connection saying to myself, okay, I need to do this because I do believe in the process.
Yes.
Because if I do this tomorrow, I'll be better.
Yes.
Yeah. And I have my friend of mine, Mike Bain, is a comedian, and we speak about this all the time. And he's a comedian. You know, as a comedian, you get exposed very, like, you know, you being in a comedy show, you say a bad joke, you know that the thing's coming, right? So they have to work with that.
So it's almost the most exposed, I think, a person
in the
can
arts,
be.
right?
There's no instrument. There's nothing else. It's you and the audience. It's all on you. It's the most raw exposure I think a person can have. And you need a very, very, very gregarious personality outgoing to get up on that stage and tend to make people laugh. And so what was he talking about? That he needs to practice a lot? Or?
No, he's a great comedian, man. And I've been talking to him, and even when he speaks to me and he talks to me, you can see his nature in his comedy, right? He already has the comedy in his nature, so you don't have to work on that. But then
okay. When you mentioned practicing earlier, I thought that's what it meant.
Yeah. So when you go to the mental area, right? To the mind, the things that's going on, right? Like we were talking about a couple minutes ago, living in the present. Just make sure that these thoughts that is going on while I'm doing the joke is not interfering between
my jokes and my feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have that a lot, right?
Yes.
But then here's the thing: I can speak with him and other comedians about these topics, right? But then when I go to a classical musician, it's like it's not even correlated. It's just like, even though they are very correlated, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear a lot, when you read a lot of history about Beethoven himself, he has his own belief system. When you see Mozart, when you see Bach, you see Rachmaninoff, you see all these great composers and great musicians, you tend to see their sudden belief. They have their own belief. They just go with those beliefs. You see where I'm coming from? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the disconnection that I'm seeing, which it could be very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a personality type difference that causes it. There's a behavior that is different. I mean, a stand-up comedian is all about direct interaction with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Performing a musical, performing arts musician is about performing a piece of music. Well, that's going to be perceived by the audience member, but that's their interaction. They're interacting with the performance,
Yes.
not in any direct way with the performer.
Mm.
Whereas verbal stand-up comedy is about verbal direct interaction with the audience and the stand-up comedian, and so it's going to create an absence of a wall
Yes.
for interaction when you talk to the stand-up comic, which the classical musician, they could be totally wallflower, and they could be completely unsocial as a person. I'm not
Yes.
saying they are. I'm saying it's possible.
It's
But
possible.
nevertheless, they could go out on that stage, and perhaps because of the immense values and soulfulness and the greatness of what they have inside them,
Yes.
they could do the most mind-blowing performance
Mm-hmm.
of the Chopin Heroic Polonaise that you
Yes.
have ever heard. But that's your reaction to their performance, and not your reaction to the interaction with them personally.
I see what you're saying. So you're making the difference that the comedian is having interaction,
Yes.
while the musician is, I don't want to say he's not having a reaction, but is doing something to let's say, it's not apply. I don't want to say the word apply.
I think the words could be that a comedian is interpersonal, whereas a musician is interactive.
Interactive.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the best word I can think of. They create something which the audience responds to. It's an interaction, but not a personal interaction.
Not a personal interaction.
Whereas the stand-up comedian is 100% interpersonal, and it's a different skill set. One's about playing the piano, the other is about playing the person.
Yeah, that's completely.
It's about playing your audience.
Yeah, far away. Yeah.
A comedian plays his audience.
Yes.
A artist plays an instrument, and that doesn't mean that they talk well with others.
That's a good point. Yes, that's a good point. When I went to Italy, right, it was a great experience. I did saw a lot of different personalities, right? Great musicians, but each one has a so different personality. It was crazy. But in the meanwhile, I can see which ones were more outspoken, and which one were more into themselves, which was something very interesting. I met an Italian piano player, which was a composer called Carlos, and he was very outspoken, but then when we talk about performance, he will get
Inhibited?
no, like very into himself, like, oh God, I'm very scared, I don't want to perform.
He felt anxiety,
His anxiety, yes.
about
But he was a
discussing
very
this.
confident guy. You will see, like, he was so confident, but then that skill set, right?
He had some concerns.
Yeah.
Interesting, and especially interesting because I mean, speaking in the most general sense, not to stereotype, but
Yes.
Italians they're so gregarious, and you could see, like you were saying, he was
Yes.
confident, he was a friendly guy, but when it came to the work things and discussing it, he had some concerns. And
Yes.
so it shows that. Well, I guess knowing your work in the end always helps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But
not that it's a bad thing that he was
No,
concerned at all.
But by the way he performed the piece, he was phenomenal. I mean, he played very good, very good. But of course, because it was not a skill set that he used to do, right? Playing in front of people, that's when everything comes in. It's like telling me, okay, Pablo, I want you to just go and manage a big company. I would just probably just be very scared, like I don't know how to deal with this stuff. I mean, don't put me there, So, all right, I think we're going to just call it for today. I think it was nice.
It was a good, wonderful talk. I remember though you had wanted to maybe discuss a little bit about artistic inspiration and where inspiration can come from.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that a little? You had mentioned that it was something that maybe we could talk about because.
Yes. Just go. We have a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just to cover that. That artistic inspiration being the thing that occurs to you in your mind about a idea for doing a work of art. If something occurs to you, this could be a work of art.
Yes.
Where does that come from? And what I can say to answer the question you had asked about, like where artistic, you're doing your writing, Paul, you're doing your blogging. Where do the ideas come from? I wanted to say that the ideas can come from anywhere so long as you are active-minded. You have to be thinking.
That's a very good point. Yes.
And artistic inspiration can happen to you regularly. You don't have to wait for finally a great idea to occur to you. You can have great ideas occur to you, but you have to be endeavoring to make them occur to you. Just for example, or to put it this way, nothing comes free. You have to be creative in order to have something happen. An artistic inspiration idea is something that you make happen in your mind. Example, you're listening to the radio, to a radio show, and it's a guy who, let's say it's a variety show where there's different musicians that play, and then the host tells stories about his life, and you've listened to that show more than once, and you're aware, there's other people in the world who have, Matt Nix, he's made shows like Burn Notice, and he's made shows like The Gifted, and there's so many people out there you're thinking who have made all these stories, and you say to yourself, wow, if you're being active-minded, you try to find the words for it. These guys are legend makers. They're telling these stories, and it's all made up. And then you say to yourself, wait a minute, legend maker. That's a very interesting term.
Yes.
And you're still being active-minded, and you think, okay, well, maybe I could write a book and call it The Legend Maker. That's a good title. Okay, so now what could that be about? The legend maker could be about a person who is involved with the inspiration, like the Greek muses, that gave inspiration to writers. And you can write a story about this being the legend maker. Okay, then so all of a sudden, you have, by being active-minded about the things you're seeing and hearing, you've created an inspiration for what could become a, superlative novel, a Harry Potter series, or anything.
So you mean probably that masterpiece that you probably took close enough, right, to make it alive.
It's that what you have there is what you have made is the seed idea. The inspiration. It's the seed idea. It's just the seed. It's not the fully grown, big
It's all
tree.
what you need.
It's the seed, which you have to make. Well, then you have to make a plot. You have to create characters. You have to decide what you want the style of the book to be, what things to include. But you've had the inspiration for a work of art because you were thinking about all this stuff that you see around you. What I'm saying is that artistic inspiration isn't something that happens in some undefinable way. When it happens, it can happen as a surprise, or it can happen by conscious effort. And this can happen by looking at large numbers of beautiful paintings and taking all those images into your mind, if you're a composer, and then trying to create from those images sound. So that you don't have to wait around as a composer for the next melody line to
Yeah, it's not going to happen,
you.
that's true.
So artistic inspiration in the various art forms, if you exert the effort, you put stuff into your subconscious this way, and then you exert the effort for something to come out of it, that inspiration can come. And it requires effort, but artistic inspiration can happen in this way. And so it's not something that you need to wait to happen, which can become a somewhat desperate process. It's something you can make happen to you by putting stuff into your mind, into your subconscious, thinking about it, and then creatively generating something out of it that is the inspiration. That's a seed, and then you develop it into a full work of art.
I'm a composer, and I can relate very closely to what you said. Yeah. So I really have ideas, and as soon as I get an idea, I just get the 80%, which is the hustle, just to sit down, write it down, put all the technique in and all that stuff. So we have to stop.
Good stuff.
Paul Daniel, right?
Yes.
The Daniel, you can find him in the blog about beautifulthing.wordpress.com, right? Or email. You have an email where people can contact you.
Yes. a_beautifulthing@yahoo.com.
Okay. There you go. For any Facebook, social media.
Well, the WordPress blog. There's the Twitter account of the Beautiful Project of the blog, and there's all kinds of other social media that I'm on. But as far as these things, those are the right ones to look at.
Okay, perfect. There you go, folks. Paul Daniel, the owner of the blog about beautiful things. Thank you for coming, man.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much.